Thank you. So my name is Oscar Gonzalez. Buenos días a todos, tardes. So thank you for joining us today. And so we are excited to walk you through an overview of the ADA National Network. Now, as for myself, I am a brown man with short brown hair and short brown beard, wearing a gray t-shirt. So we're going to be discussing a little bit more about our Spanish language outreach project, or SLO as we like to refer to. Today, what we will do, we're going to be discussing key findings that we've had over conversations that we've had with community members, as well as experiences from different regions to give you insight on how this project is being implemented and the lessons that we have learned along the way. And so next slide, please. And so here are our wonderful colleagues. We have Mariana Garcia Torres. She is here from the ADA Knowledge Translation Center. We also have Jan Garrett today, which she is the Deputy Director from the Pacific ADA Center, and Maynor Guillen, who is the e-learning and multimedia producer from the Mid-Atlantic ADA Center. And so we're all going to be participating today, and we will be just passing the mic along to them in a few short minutes. And so today what we're going to be discussing, next slide, please. So here is our agenda today. So we're going to do a little bit of overview of what the ADA National Network, as Ashley mentioned, the ADA is the Americans with Disability Act. So we're going to be discussing what we do and how, we provide information and resources, as well as an overview of the ADA National Network Spanish Language Outreach Project, so the SLO. Key findings from stage, as this is a multi-stage project, and we will see what the stages are in a little bit. We're also going to be discussing our, what we have developed or what's going on for the new stage of the project, as well as doing findings and practices and lessons learned. And we're going to have, experiences from the Pacific ADA Center. So Jan Garrett will comment a little bit more on that. And we're also going to have Maynor Guillen give us a little bit about the perspectives from the Mid-Atlantic Center. And, after that, we'll open it up for questions and answers. And so next slide, please. All right, so for those of you that are international, as I've heard that there's plenty of people that are not from the United States here today. So the ADA National Network is a collaborative of regional centers that provide information, training, and technical assistance on the Americans with Disability Act. So what we do is we aim to provide information and resources to individuals, businesses, and organizations with any questions that they have on the ADA. So throughout the network, there are 10 regional centers across the United States. And the reason for this is because each of them addresses specific geographical needs. The needs from Chicago, where I'm located, might not be the same as the needs from Wyoming. So that, whenever anyone calls into the centers, they're able to be connected to the regional center that will have more resources locally. And so the ADA National Network helps ensure that people with disabilities have information and resources on accessing their rights and opportunities. And this is across various settings. So which are the titles of the ADA, which we are looking at: employment, public accommodations, transportation, state and local government services, telecommunications, and more. So this also includes, the rights, information on rights and obligations that service providers also have. So we are here for any questions that individuals, family members, businesses have on the ADA. Next slide, please. All right, so here we're going to talk a little bit more about what is the Spanish Language Outreach Project. So we do have 5 goals overall for this project. So our efforts also includes programming to reach communities where ADA knowledge might be limited or misunderstood. And so here we're looking primarily at Spanish-speaking populations because it's one of the largest growing, and it is the largest group outside of English being a spoken language in the United States. So the SLO project is a direct response to the growing need for outreach and education about the ADA among Spanish-speaking communities. And so we launched this initiative to address the gap in accessing both information and resources for those that primarily speak Spanish. So it is a 5-year project and a 5-year collaboration between all of the 10 regional centers, including the 11th center, which is the ADA Knowledge Translation Center. And so the project aims to create culturally relevant, accessible resources aimed at Spanish speakers, so they can better understand their rights under the ADA, and to equip service providers with the tools to be able to inform them about the ADA and civil rights if they have a disability for this population. And so our strategy has included, attending community events, translating materials, and of course doing a digital outreach whenever we can, such as, it's Hispanic Heritage Month. So, we also provide information in Spanish and social media throughout the national network's social media pages. And so our goal is really to increase ADA awareness and utilization of the ADA, so they can, be able to exercise their rights that they have, especially for Spanish-speaking individuals. So we do have 5 goals here. Let's go ahead and discuss what the goal 1 is, which is understand the context of Spanish-speaking community. So this is kind of where we start, doing a lit review and discussing what's going on around the United States. Goal 2, we have assess the diverse regional and national community needs of Spanish language speakers. So we have conversations around the country around disability rights and the ADA. Goal 3, develop plans to address or remove barriers to using ADA information. So we start looking at what's available and what the community would like to have. Related to the ADA. Goal 4, we have create knowledge, translation, intervention, and products. So here's when we start creating more materials, and we'll discuss a little bit on that one as we moved into stage 2, which includes goal 4 and 3. And then goal 5, we have conduct outreach and connect with local leaders and partners. We have goal 5 here at the end, but ideally goal 5 should be goal 1, and that's one of the lessons that we learned when we were conducting these conversations. And so we'll look at, next slide, please. So we'll go ahead and look at the activities for stage 1, which are goals 1 and 2. And so one of the most critical steps for our effort was the creation of the ADA National Network Spanish Language Outreach Committee. So what this committee is composed of different professionals from different regions of the ADA National Network who bring their expertise in both disability rights and community outreach. So our mission is to ensure that Spanish-speaking communities have equitable access to the ADA-related information. Sorry, I have to pronounce a little bit more because I do tend to speak fast and I'm slowing it down. And so we play a central role in guiding the project direction and ensuring that our strategies are culturally relevant, effective, and can be sustainable for all of our regions. To effectively reach our Spanish-speaking populations, we needed to connect with organizations that already serve these populations. So we identified both national and regional Spanish language organizations that play a significant role in advocating for the rights of Hispanic or Latino individuals. So we'll interchange the language here a bit. And so these organizations are essential because they are already established and help build trust and bring a meaningful presence to the Spanish-speaking community. So that's something that, we can help connect with and, provide more information on ADA and disability rights. So we identified almost 2,000 organizations throughout the United States. Of course, they're spread out all over the place. So, depending on population density of Spanish speakers, of course, sometimes it is a little bit difficult for Spanish speakers in rural areas or low population areas to obtain services. But that's something that was also addressed in conversations that we had. And so before we started the conversations with our community members, we reviewed existing literature and did lit reviews on Spanish-speaking communities to see how they were already currently engaging with knowing about their disability rights and or the ADA. And so this kind of helped us identify gaps in current outreach efforts, as well as developing materials and strategies that are more likely to be embraced by Spanish-speaking individuals. And so, as I mentioned, we've had conversations with community members. We call their interviews, their qualitative interviews, but we like to discuss them as conversations to make sure that people feel like they are engaged with us, that they're feedback is very welcome and very helpful. So we conducted these conversations at both the national and regional levels. So these interviews involve 9 national organizations that provide resources across the country, and we had individual regional organizations that work closely within certain states and or cities. And so the goal was to gain a deeper understanding of what the community needed, as well as how we can better communicate ADA protections and resources for those individuals with disabilities in their area. So the feedback that we got from these conversations was very invaluable in being able to shape how our outreach materials are being created and the strategies that we have are starting to do so we can provide ADA information. And we learned about the most effective channels for communication, misconceptions that people have about disability, misconceptions that people have about the ADA, and the types of resources that are most needed. So following all these conversations, we developed a series of national and regional reports that are all available under the adata.org website, so the National Network website. So this information is very detailed and available for all to see. As well as the recommendations that the community members provided for us. So these resources have been created for both service providers and community members to discuss the ADA and to have a special focus on accessibility for Spanish speakers. So we do have some bilingual infographics in particular because individuals told us that something that's visual, very appealing, plain language is one of the most effective ways to present complex information, and the ADA is a very complex law. So we want to be able to have it visually appealing and in easy to understand format. And then, of course, to further enhance our outreach efforts, we also have developed a video series that is extremely close to launching because this is a whole new initiative for us in Spanish. There's been a few snags and a little bit of going back and forth and reviewing and optimizing items, but we are creating these video series to better explain the ADA, better explain civil rights, better explain disability for Spanish speakers, built around the conversations that we had. And so this is something that's going to happen, and Mariana will discuss this in a little bit. And so some of the key findings that we have are that the community members identified was language. So language is one of the most significant barriers that many individuals face because they don't have access to critical information about their rights, services, or programs that are available, especially when requesting accommodations under the ADA. And so simply, there's just not enough available material in the language. There's not enough clear communication that don't know how to understand and navigate or advocate for their rights. So limited information in Spanish is one of the subcategories here. And then we also have effective communication. So beyond translation, effective communication involves making sure that the message is clear and relatable to the audience. And so that's one of the subcategories. We also have translation and interpretation services. So just because items are translated doesn't mean that there's a proper interpretation, as well as real-time assistance and being able to understand information. We also have low literacy in plain language, especially for our older adults and immigrants that come to the country as adults. Low literacy in plain language is very important for them to be able to understand services and understand their rights. So that's one of the other subcategories under language. Of course, we have the second primary barrier, which is lack of information about services and programs. So even when information is available in Spanish, many people remain unaware of what services exist or how to even access them. And so this is particular when it comes to disability rights or mental health, which is two big items that came up during our conversations. Then, of course, we also have fear and lack of trust. And so many Spanish-speaking individuals, particularly those from immigrant backgrounds, may fear interacting with government and official services. And finally, the fourth key finding was stigma and lack of education on disability and mental health. So there's often a cultural stigma surrounding disability and mental health issues here with our Spanish speakers. And so this can help prevent individuals from seeking help or accommodations that they may need with the ADA. So let's look at, next slide, please. Oh, I completely went ahead of myself. Next slide, please. Forgot we were doing this. There we go. So let's look at the language barrier. So as I mentioned, one of the most significant challenges, language, and that sometimes services about rights and responsibilities was only provided in English. And so when we're looking at individuals that attempt to seek help, they often encounter a shortage of translation or interpretation services. And so without these services, there's a clear barrier to communicating or receiving appropriate assistance. Secondary is that even many organizations do not have bilingual staff to serve effectively whenever Spanish-speaking individuals approach them. So this shortage can also lead to limited availability for individuals to access their necessary services. The next one would be even when materials are translated, they might not always be culturally relevant. Literal translations not always effective, and often do miss the nuances of ensuring that the message resonates with Spanish speakers. And lastly, we're looking that many materials are written in a complicated language. So even after they're translating to Spanish, and it is everything goes well, it makes it difficult based on legalese language for individuals to fully grasp information, especially if they have lower literacy levels. Next slide, please. All right. And so now the second biggest category that we had was stigma. So why is it a barrier to Spanish speakers? So those are negative beliefs about disability. So there is a significant stigma surrounding mental health, which is often viewed differently from physical abilities. We have that many people don't realize that mental health conditions are covered under the ADA. So as a result, those struggling with those kind of conditions may not seek help or realize that they can request accommodations. And then at the same time, during our conversations, many people didn't understand what constitutes a disability. So disability is often thought as in terms of anything that is physical. Sorry, I'm combining visual and physical impairments, but it can also encompass a wide range of conditions, which includes chronic illnesses and mental health disorders. And so when individuals don't know that conditions like diabetes, depression, or kidney conditions can qualify as a disability, if it substantially limits one or more major life activities. So these are some things that we as a culture, we as a community also needs to be aware of when we're discussing disability. So there often is a gap of how people perceive and understand certain health conditions. So cultural beliefs and lack of information may lead to people think that only severe or lifelong conditions count as disability, when in reality, the ADA covers a very broad spectrum. And so now Mariana will talk a little bit more to us about a few more barriers that came up during these conversations. Mariana?
Thank you, Oscar. This is Mariana speaking. I am a Latina woman in her mid-30s, tan skin, brown hair, wearing a black jacket. So I will speak about two more barriers that we found in the initial stages of our study. So here we're looking at what about rights and why is this barrier, like knowing about rights. So we found that Latinos, especially those with disabilities, are unsure about their rights in the United States. So there's also a misunderstanding of rights as a concept and inaccurate information regarding what to do in case of discrimination, for example, where to go. We also found uncertainty about immigration status, and I think that resonates with some of the talks we heard earlier today about the immigration status and rights. And actually the question of, do immigrants have rights? What about if I am undocumented, et cetera, et cetera. So that it's a big barrier for our community when they try to, understand the rights and advocate for them. And then we also saw that some people knew about the IDA, but that didn't really understand it, which, as Oscar mentioned, is very broad and it can be very complex. So it can be misinterpreted. And finally, we found that the majority of members that we interviewed, actually, they didn't know about the ADA. So this is why this project is unique and aims to address this lack of knowledge about rights and developing a specific material for our community, talking about intentional materials and stuff like that. Next slide, please. Okay, and the last barrier is fear and lack of trust. As I said, we heard this earlier, so it's not a big surprise by now, but in terms of rights and legal um, aspects, that becomes a huge barrier for our community. We found that fear and lack of trust are mainly related to the fear of deportation or problems with immigration services. So there are significant and have mistrust. Because they're not sure who to trust their information, right? And we were talking about like asking for social security numbers and things like that. And some entities, unfortunate, even if they don't have to, they ask for some of this documentation. So people, they don't trust. And that's what we heard from the interviews. So also negative experience or mistreatment can also lead to mistrust. And then people hesitate when they need to ask for help or support about rights violations or protection of their rights. And this is why people get information from other sources, and sometimes the risk is that the information might be inaccurate. So the ultimate consequence is that fear and mistrust just stop people from speaking up about the rights, and that's when we see a lot of violations in our community. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are we doing with these findings? So after a better understanding of our community, like the community context, as Oscar explained, the ADA network, we develop, and we're still working on developing new training specific to the Spanish-speaking community. More specifically, we have created a new video series or webinars that includes materials in Spanish and English. And I'll speak about this series in a little bit. But technically what we did is we took all these barriers that we found and we said, okay, we're gonna, like develop a specific video for each barrier. So we cover the basics first, because one of the things we learned is when we were trying to, educate our community about the ADA, we noticed we were missing so much before actually talking about the ADA, talking about rights, talking about disability. What does that even mean for our community? How do we understand disability? So we took a couple steps back and we said, okay, we need to start from a little bit, more basic information before we actually introduce the ADA. So that's the process we had to develop these new videos. And I'll speak on that in the next slide. But for now, we just wanted to give like a brief overview of what we did with these findings. So we developed these videos. Also, they address real case examples to show a more practical application of the ADA, which sometimes is very hard when you just listen or hear something about very legal, but you don't know how it applies to your specific life. So we took real case examples, and we put them in these videos, trying to make things more friendly, easy to understand, and that people can relate to their situation. And then this video series is intended for 5 main groups of people, and that includes people with disabilities, family members, which is a very, very important part of our community, and sometimes they don't receive enough education about many things in the United States, employers, service providers and professionals, and other members who work in the community. So this is a very quick overview of how, as a network, we are addressing these barriers. Next slide, please. So the video series we were talking about they address goal 3 and 4. So as a big project, so first we identify the needs, we understand the context, we listen to the recommendations from them, because we ask them what are the barriers, but we also ask, what do you recommend for us to do, and include, your perspective into this whole process. So we took that feedback and then we applied it in goal 3 and 4. And let's go to next slide, and I will explain a little bit what this video series is a little bit more in detail. So here is a visual of the structure of the video series. So we have 5 videos, and each address a different topic. So as we can see here, and as I mentioned earlier, we wanted to build knowledge to understand easier the ADA. So video one starts with disability and stigma. Is more of a basic and general approach to basic concepts such as what is a disability, how do we understand, why are we afraid to talk about disability, and the stigma associated to it. We provide specific case scenarios or examples of real life that help us see the concepts in practice. That's a very important, and we knew that was key part of this whole process. And as, of course, as a knowledge translation tool. In the second video, we talk a little bit more in depth of the overview of the barriers we just mentioned. And the purpose is for people to see and understand what the barriers are so we know how to address them. And we mean like, especially like employers, service providers, it's important to know what are these barriers. So each person, each community member in their role can say like, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about that. So maybe I can address this, or I can include this in my practice or in my organization or whatever. Video 3 addresses the lack of information about rights and provides a basic overview of legal terms and some history of civil rights movements and other Hispanic Latino movements that are important to provide a framework of civil rights so we can introduce the ADA with a more solid baseline, right? And then, as expected, our video number 4 is the longest video. It covers the ADA and the basics. So as we explained, these videos are meant to provide an overall understanding of the law. So we cover like the different titles, specific key concepts, and real case examples to make the information more approachable. We also develop new material that goes with those videos to complement the video. And then, as we said, I mean, the law is very, very broad. So this is meant to be basic. And if people have questions, we always encourage to reach to their ADA regional center because as part of the project is for them to learn that they have support in the region, whatever they are across the United States. Finally, the 5th video covers the role of community members, and it brings a case for each group, like the 5 groups I mentioned earlier. It provides recommendations and then kind of like makes a reflection of how to understand the ADA and how we as community members, those who work with the community, we are from the community, we have family, anybody can learn about the ADA and inform our community. So at the end of the day, this whole purpose is to ensure that people with disabilities and the Spanish-speaking community can equally participate in the community. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are we expecting with these videos? So we hope that we can develop new relationships with community leaders and organizations to build trust. And I think build trust is a key theme that we've heard during today's conference and address that fear and mistrust in the community. We also expect to educate different community members about the ADA and the rights of the Latino community with disabilities. And we are working on delivering trainings and sessions by someone who is from the community, knows the language, knows the culture. This was very important in the interview. So our bicultural and bilingual team, they deliver these videos, but they also are working on doing some outreach activities across the network. And we include testimonies and real case examples. And again, this is just very important to make it applicable. And overall, we want to increase awareness of the national network. And unfortunately, not a lot of people know about it. So it takes time, we know, but this is a good first step for people to know about the law, know about the network. And even you guys, if you're hearing, if you know someone that can benefit from knowing about the regional center, even if it's any question, that's very important. If you can share the information, and Oscar will provide more details about where to find these videos. Next slide, please. And then the final thing is just what we've learned from this project. And then one of the things that Oscar mentioned earlier was developing long-term relationships with community and members helps build trust, understand the needs, and set meaningful goals. And as we said, this was very important, and we should have done this from the beginning. So offering bilingual outreach and technical assistance could be a good way to bring something to the community. And then after that, we can ask, for like interviews and more conversations with them, because that mistrust and that lack of, trust can happen. And we saw that in the beginning, we didn't like when we tried to do recruitment for these interviews. We had so many people but at the end of the day, we ended up with only 60 interviews, which is a good amount. But I think if we would have switched and bring something first to them and then invite them and explain why these conversations are important and what's the purpose of the project, that would have been different. So this is how we have covered the main goals of the project, but we also have real applications in this panel. So now I'm going to pass it to Jan, and she will share some of the outreach activities in one of our regions across the US. So Jan, it's all yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mariana. My name is Jan Garrett, and I am the Deputy Director of the Pacific ADA Center and the Center on Disability. And I am a white woman with salt and pepper hair, and I am wearing a dark blue dress with a multi-blue scarf. And you can't see this on Zoom, but I am a person with a significant disability. I was born missing all 4 of my limbs, and I use a power wheelchair for mobility. So I am somebody for whom the ADA and disability rights are very, very important. And it is so gratifying to be able to educate the Spanish language community about the ADA and so many questions that they have. And I just want to first give kind of a shout out to Mariana and Oscar, who have been so supportive of us and working with the community in moving things forward. So it's been wonderful to have them. And Oscar's traveled to Region 9 a few times. And so, and Mariana's helped us connect with other organizations. So we really do appreciate them and the whole Spanish language outreach project. And it has, in fact, led us to be able to hire someone now that we have, Savannah, who is, I think, on this webinar, who is wonderful, and she's Latina and she is bilingual. And so we are moving forward not only in trying to educate the Spanish language community through those of us who speak English, but also moving toward that with hiring bilingual staff and bicultural staff. And that's so, so important. So it has really helped us move forward. So next slide. So obviously in Region 9, which covers Arizona, Nevada, California, Hawaii, and the Pacific Basin territories, that includes Guam, American Samoa, and Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, we have a very large Spanish-speaking population. The percentages of the Hispanic Latino disability percentages are in California 9.2%, in Nevada the same 9.2%, and in Arizona 10.9% of individuals who are Hispanic and Latino and have disabilities. 58% of the total regional population of the region we serve are minorities, and 18.9 million Hispanics and Latinos live in our region. And 24.5, so almost a quarter of our region speaks Spanish as their first language and maybe their only language. And of course, California, because it's a very large population, has the largest group of Spanish speakers in the country. We have 15.5 million people who are Hispanic Latino. Next slide. So the Spanish language outreach activities and how Region 9 has participated in them is that we have worked with Oscar and Mariana to foster connection and collaboration with new Hispanic Latino organizations in our region, and to strengthen our community ties and enhance our outreach efforts. We actually have a new affiliate, La Familia, which is helping us do that as well. We also attend and hold in-person events for people with disabilities, family members, and caretakers to provide direct support and valuable resources. And we participate in those events that happen around our region. We also offer virtual presentation opportunities so that we can extend our reach and reach people like across the region who might be able to join a Zoom call to learn more about the ADA and their rights under the ADA as parents or as people with disabilities. And we have actively sought formal partnerships like we have with La Familia, like we have with Congreso Familiar, formal partnerships with the Hispanic Latino communities in our region to build those long-term relationships and the mutual support that we can provide, because we can come in and talk about the ADA and they can help us understand better about how we reach the Latino Hispanic community. Next slide. So we have learned several lessons from our work with the Spanish language outreach project, and that is to recognize the importance of providing ADA technical assistance in Spanish, which Savannah can now help us do wonderfully. And before that, our affiliates around our region helped us do, because many of them have Spanish-speaking staff. So we appreciate the help that they had provided us before we were able to hire Savannah. But we certainly recognize the importance of providing that technical assistance both on the phone and by email to people who contact us, whose primary language is Spanish. We also have learned that community education is really of huge value when we give really focused, concise, and tailored information that is specific to the needs of the community when we go to the community and make presentations about the ADA. I mean, often we start our presentations with, do you even know what a civil right is? Do you know that the ADA is a civil rights law? Do you know how it might cover you or your kids? And so being able to do that community education, both virtually and in person, has been huge. And we hope it has made a big impact on the community. We've also partnered in live events with community leaders, and we've done that now for a couple of years. And so we're hoping that if we just continue to show up with Spanish language materials and show up with people who can speak Spanish, that we will foster trust and strengthen the relationships that we have already built within our region. And we have created and translated information into a variety of formats, including obviously slides, but also infographics and other formats. And we're looking forward to being able to offer the videos to people that Oscar and Mariana spoke about earlier, because we want to offer people materials in formats that are easily accessible to them and that they can take advantage of most easily to understand about the ADA and how those rights are important in their community. So I think I think that's my last slide. If we go to the next slide, I will turn it over to Maynard to talk about his experience in Region 3.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maynard Guillen. I am the e-learning and multimedia producer for the Mid-Atlantic ADA Center. I'm a Latino male, tan skin, and I'm wearing a burgundy shirt and a beige suit jacket. On to slide 23, please. Okay. We're going to start off by looking at some of the Mid-Atlantic ADA Center regional demographics. The Mid-Atlantic region of the U.S. has a population of 21.5 million and is composed of 6 states, which are the District of Columbia, D.C., Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and West Virginia. Let's see. These states combined have a 35% minority population, of which 2.7 identify as Hispanic or Latino. In this region, 6.4 of the overall population speaks Spanish. Pennsylvania is the largest state in the Mid-Atlantic region and has the largest population at almost 13 million and houses the largest group of Spanish speakers at 1 million. On to slide 24. We're going to discuss the Spanish language outreach activities in the Mid-Atlantic Center. We've partnered with the Independence Center of Northern Virginia to develop a regional initiative for families and youth with disabilities transitioning from school to work and onto adulthood, and their involvement with the ADA. And we've come to see that within our communities, there's a huge need for people to get information regarding disability civil rights in the ADA. And from us creating this event, it was an eye-opening for us to see the huge need in our communities. And that's considering that the US is the fourth largest, has the fourth largest Spanish speakers in the world. So there is a significant need, and that's what we've come to identify. Let's see. In May, we presented the conference Camino a la Transición de Escuela a la Vida in Spanish, that translates to Way to Transition from School to Work. And this conference was completely done in Spanish, where we had a great attendance of families and youth with disabilities, where they learn about disability rights and ADA, and the ADA and community resources available to them. Many of these families did not know many of these resources were available to them. So they had been losing on financial assistance that was available to them. And this was information that they had never had been able to gather because it had never been presented to them in their own language. And that's one of the things that we see about immigrant communities, is that they're more comfortable receiving information in their native language, where there is a significant difference where if the information is translated, so oftentimes that is misunderstood or not understood at the same level where if they were to be getting it in their native languages. It was great to see the reactions from the participants, to see that the information they were learning they would be able to apply in their communities. So for us, that was a great feeling. Let's see. And we also, from that, we've developed a webinar series in both English and Spanish that's covering disability rights and the ADA. We have focused on reaching advocacy organizations that led us to foster connections, collaborations, and outreach with Spanish-speaking organizations. Our plan is to continue to hold in-person events for people with disabilities and their families, and continue to work with service providers that work with Spanish language communities and or people with disabilities. We are focusing on ADA information that is culturally relatable and meets accessibility requirements. We are also creating PSAs in Spanish related to the ADA for radio, television, and social media, and posting online to effectively reach and inform Spanish speakers audiences. So on to slide 25. The lessons that we've learned from this project, we've come to recognize the importance of providing ADA assistance in Spanish. People understand their rights and obligations better by receiving information in their native languages. When providing ADA information, we must make sure that the information is applicable and easy to understand. We've also come to understand that we must actively participate in events and form partnerships with community leaders to reduce fear and mistrust of outside entities. Immigrant communities are often targets of scams and that's mainly because of their lack of being able to communicate in English effectively. We've come to find the use of radio, television, website, and social media as the platforms for disseminating information. And that's extremely important for all organizations to get onto and get familiarized and learn how to use these platforms so that you have the better reach, the best reach for your organizations and your projects. And let's see. And we've also learned that staff who is qualified and culturally competent are essential for representation in our communities. People feel more comfortable, as I said earlier, to conduct business or learn topics in their native languages. So with that said, I'll pass it on to Oscar and Mariana for questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Maynard. Thank you, Jan. So here we're going to look at our resources. So, of course, thank you all for taking time out of your day to hear about the ADA National Network as well as the SLO project. So if you do have any questions or would like resources on the ADA, please feel free to reach out to us at any point in time. We do have a 1-800 toll-free number, which is 1-800-949-4232, and that will help you get connected with your local ADA regional center. Now, if you would like more detailed information on the SLO project, you can visit our website at adata.org/SLO. So we are here to help and make sure that everyone has the support they need to fully understand and access their disability rights under the ADA. So the video series is going to be posted there. And so we're doing the back scenes, developing that skeletal frame for the website to come up for the videos. So that's going to be available for people to see and share. It's going to be free. Each video is about 10-15 minutes long, except for the fourth video for the ADA, because at that point, we're really getting into the meat substance of our project. So that one's a little bit longer, around 25-30 minutes. So it's great if you are able to share it, as we all play a role as community members in our community. And of course, if you would also like to connect with us and for us to be able to go out to your area and speak in Spanish about the ADA and to discuss their rights and responsibilities and obligations, just feel free to contact with us and we'll be able to hear from you. Thank you.